like the dollar she deserves, right, KG?
Yeah.
Don't give her a damn thing.
You know what, man? Shout out
let
to
her
you
do
all, chat family. Thank you guys for tapping in with the Wake Up Woodward crew. Go ahead and satisfy that like button. Just go ahead and smash it. Treat it right. Treat it nice, man. Y'all already know what it is. Hey.
For all my viewers in the chat right now, go ahead and touch that like button. We just getting started, baby. Ooh. I know you feel that. I know you feel that, like.
Smash.
We got to get that R&B album going, man.
D'Angelo.
You know what, man? Look, we'll get something going soon. We definitely will. But we got to talk about the Detroit Pistons.
Yeah.
They have finally spent some cap space on players that we believe will play. Unlike in previous years, Monte Morris didn't play. Bojan Bogdanovic was hobbled. We were waiting for a while for Ali Burks. And when they did play, there was always some type of injury that they had. They went and traded for Gallinari and Muscala. Those guys wound up getting injured as well. After us seeing a good 7-game stretch with them in the lineup.
Yeah.
And then they got injured again. And it was just like, what in the world? What in the world? So the hope here is the Pistons signing Tobias Harris, 2 years, $52 million contract, fully guaranteed. This was first reported by Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN. The Detroit Pistons, they make a move to bring in a stretch four that can shoot from behind the arc. We continue to say you got to space the floor for Cade Cunningham. Now you got Tim Hardaway Jr., you got Tobias Harris. It's not your A1 type free agents that you're looking for. But one of my takes with Tobias Harris is this. Because there was a question I was going to ask you guys as well about Klay Thompson and the money that he got versus Tobias Harris. Cheaper deal for Klay Thompson. I wonder if there's a little bit of a discount for a team that just got to the finals for the Mavs versus the Pistons.
Sure.
Similar shooting numbers, similar stats. You know, with the Pistons have been better off kind of pursuing a Klay Thompson over Tobias. But I like what Tobias brings stat-wise. I like what he could bring as it relates to the mix with this young core. But he wanted to be here. This is not a secret. For the better part of a year or a year and a half, we have reported that Tobias Harris wants to be here. His wife is from here. They appreciated that, not just kind of living here, but how the fans have treated them. Not just while they were here, but long after. So definitely good on Detroit fans for being those types of people that you leave an impression on players that kind of were here, left, and decide, you know what, let me take another chance on Detroit again because of how these people treated me as well. So that to me is really, really reassuring. I know Tobias Harris is not, you guys know I'm looking for Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan. Go out there and give me one of these top 25, top 20, top 30 players from last year. But I am okay with the Tobias Harris signing. And Flannel, I asked you a little bit yesterday. You gave me your quick reaction.
Yes.
I know you talked about it on Big D Energy, but for our Wake Up Woodward family, brother.
Yes, I am happier with the Tobias signing than most, personally. One, because you mentioned it before about players who signed free agency deals last year and the year before but got hurt. Tobias Harris over his career has been a very durable player historically. And I know he's getting up there in age, and as you get older, you're more susceptible to injury, but he hasn't shown a history of being hurt often. I'm not saying he's never been hurt. I'm just saying he's a very durable player historically. And you just look at his career numbers. I mean, 16.6 rebounds for his whole career on 48, 37, 84 shooting splits. That's pretty good. I mean, that's a very good NBA career, and those are very good. Those are a lot better splits than a lot of Pistons players had last season. He's a vet. He's a 6'8", kind of like 3-4, who's, I would say, an upgrade defensively over what Bojan was. He can shoot the three. He can space the floor. For his career, 37% from three on 4 attempts per game, and he wasn't necessarily my first choice for free agency, but you mentioned it. He wanted to be there, and when you think of guys like, say, Gary Trent or Buddy Hield, they're better three-point shooters than Tobias Harris, but Tobias Harris, for a couple of years of his career, has been a borderline all-star. I mean, last season, he averaged 17 a game. He's the type of guy that I think on a perfectly constructed roster could be a third best on a championship team. I'm not saying he's going to be that on this team, but you add Tobias Harris to this roster. You already added Tim Hardaway Jr. I hope to God that they get something worked out with Fontecchio. You've got Marcus Sasser, and for now, you've got Isaiah Stewart. Yeah. That's Cade surrounded by 5 shooters. And some of them have shown a propensity to play well defensively, including Isaiah Stewart, including even Simone Fontecchio. I think he can guard fours. Tobias, not the best defender, but he's fine enough. Same with Tim Hardaway Jr. When you get a guy like Tobias Harris, and I'm going to kind of, pair it with Tim Hardaway Jr., I think a guy like Cade Cunningham, because I am a stan. I'll admit it, I'm a stan when it comes to Cade Cunningham. I believe a guy like that, a guy who put up all-star numbers last year, a guy whose numbers across the board compared favorably to even guys like Paolo Banchero and Mikal Bridges, guys like that. He's a guy that you can expedite things with if you get guys around him who fit. Like a Tobias Harris, who I think fits. Like a Tim Hardaway Jr., who I think fits. And with Tim Hardaway Jr., you also got the added bonus of the assets. I like the move, and I think the Pistons, and maybe I sound like a slappy, maybe I sound a little bit too, because I've been hurt before, but I think this is instant, at minimum 25 wins, maybe 30. And there's still more that they can do. I really believe that.
When you talk about last year's over-under set by Vegas being 28.5, it's like, I don't want the expectation to be slightly better than last year.
Yeah.
When you're spending this amount of money, the CBA already said that the Pistons have to spend up to a certain salary floor, so there's more money to be spent. And you said a name there, Gary Trent, who a lot of kind of talking heads, media people, and such are stating he might be able to be had for one of the exceptions. And the Pistons have both of their exceptions. It'd be interesting to see if they make a call on a player like that to continue to bolster things, but because the exception doesn't take from the cap space, which they're trying to utilize to be able to bring in more draft and future capital assets. So that'd be interesting.
Not to interrupt, but so are you saying you could bring in a Gary Trent and also maybe make one of those trades for an expiring contract to get an asset or two?
Yeah, you still got $24 million cap space in the mid-level exception and the veterans exception and the vets minimum. Those don't count as a part of that $24 million.
Depending on whose contract you might have to absorb, along with Gary Trent, I'm not going to say it, but I'd be getting pretty excited. As long as, of course, Cade stays healthy and people stay healthy. But as far as construction goes, don't hate it at all.
Yeah. So I'm neutral on the Tobias Harris move. He wasn't my first choice. I don't necessarily think he's the greatest fit of all time, but I understand why he's here. I like the veteran presence he brings, and he can shoot the ball. He is 37% from three-point line, but what I struggle with is the timing of it all. It happens so fast. Like I wanted the Pistons to be like the town bike and let every team in town have a ride. Like I want Trajan Langdon's phone being off the hook. Like I wanted the Pistons to be the dumpster fire for all these contracts, and $26 million a year, 52 over 2. That takes a big chunk out of that. What they have. 55, 65 to begin with. So there's still stuff you can do with the 24 mil they have available, but I don't know. I just thought for how Trajan Langdon sort of hinted at how he was going to approach this, I thought they could have been a better escrow account for some of these contracts. Gather some picks. I think they're probably out of the Zach LaVine, sweepstakes, if we want to call it that, and maybe not. Explain to me if they.
So.
But like $43 million a year, I think he makes. How they make this all work?
Obviously, you're gonna have to have some outgoing contracts, but if they haven't rubber stamped everything yet, Cade Cunningham's contract also doesn't start until next season.
The season after.
I think it's the season after because next year is the last year of his rookie deal.
But they just signed Patrick Williams in $90 million. They signed Jaden McDaniel to a contract also. So like. Wouldn't Beef Stew be your only outgoing contract that has any dollar value? And they don't need him.
No, he wouldn't be the only one of dollar value. Your young players, it would probably take Stu and another young player, but there are ways to kind of finagle trades and things. Like when we saw them bring in Jeremy Grant, they were able to free up some capital, make the sign and trade deal with the Denver Nuggets and make some happen. I don't believe they're out of the Zach LaVine thing because it's continuously being reported that despite the moves the Bulls are making, they're still looking to get rid of Zach LaVine, and they're even trying to attach a first-round pick to it. If there's a way if there's a way to make something like that happen, I honestly, I'm doing that deal. Yeah. I'm doing it instantly. With the Tobias Harris stuff, I understand if some people find it a little underwhelming because it's not our first choice. We've been in the trenches for 10, 15 years waiting for this team to kind of turn things over. And when you go through what we just went through with the restore, we're sitting around right now waiting for what should be our reward, which is a team that's ready to make the playoffs. And instead, we're kind of starting things over. So I get it with like Tobias Harris and Tim Hardaway Jr. And some people are like, you know what? I don't know what this is going to do for our team right now and making sure we punch our ticket to the playoffs. But in terms of making sure you strike this balance, because it was something that you stated that I agree with, but you have to find a balance. It's not just the draft capital you bring in, but how you also support the players you've already drafted. And I do believe that you have to find that balance in between what draft capital you bring in and the types of vets like a Tobias Harris that can actually help this young squad take the necessary step forward, whereas like a Bojan Bogdanovic, he wasn't necessarily that player. The thing that I like about Tim Hardaway and Tobias Harris is not all three-point percentages are the same. And Simone Fontecchio, you can throw him in there too. These guys can take a high volume of three-point shots, and their percentages are the 37s and the 36% and the 35 and the 38s. Whereas other players, like an Ivy and some other players on our squad, they take 3-4 threes, and they're at 34%. As that volume goes up, that percentage continues to go down. And so you got some guys that you know, Cade Cunningham can absolutely depend on when you're talking about getting down court, getting in the half court, absorbing that gravity and kicking it out to a three-point shooter who you know, out of 7 or 8 threes that they take a game, they're going to hit at least 3 or 4 of these things. That's so much more different than what they had to rely on last year. And I'm excited for what this can do for the offense, but they do need more.
Of course they need more, but I think they've done enough for this to at least look like a somewhat real basketball team next year. I mean, you got some veteran shooters. You're not going to be starting the year off with Killian Hayes and Asar Thompson in your starting lineup, which was just malfeasance in the worst play. But hey, the man who was responsible for that malfeasance is now gone. Yeah. So that doesn't mean anything for right now. But you were right. You need, with how bad it's been, you need some veterans. You need someone to just make it look like a real basketball team that is somewhat watchable. You can't have what was last year. And as you said before, a guy like Tim Hardaway Jr., who not only for the assets, but for the 36% career three-point percentage on 6 attempts per game, a high-volume shooter who still shoots it efficiently, a guy like Simone Fontecchio, who is a restricted free agent and we want to bring back, but was over 40% on high volume in his time with the Pistons. Yep. A guy like Tobias Harris, who isn't as high a volume, only 4 attempts per game in his career, but about 37%. That to me tells you that he's got good shot selection and he's smart with when he takes them. And that's another type of player that I think Cade will benefit from. So I'm happy as of now, but as you said before, I want more. If you can get Zach LaVine and take on a first-round pick or two,
gosh,
some of the things I'm thinking might be a little reckless. I'll just say that. So I'm not going to put that out in the air now, but I think if you get Zach LaVine plus assets, Tim Hardaway Jr. plus assets, and Tobias Harris in free agency, that's a winning offseason for me.
They're a 14-win team last year. You can be as reckless as you want. I support you. For real.
You got to be as reckless as you can be, man. And KJ, I want to get your thoughts. When we get back, we're going to talk a little bit more about this and what we think the Detroit Pistons. I want to get also the feel on just NBA free agency in general, too. But let me tell you about Premier Pet Supply. Welcome back, people. It is Wake Up Woodward. We appreciate you guys for choosing to kick off your day with the Woo Crew. We got the starting 5 in the building. And shout out to 6-man, that dude, Justin. And we are talking about the Detroit Pistons, their free agency so far. It's been a busy offseason for them, from the front office to the coaching. They finally got their coach and JB Bickerstaff to what they're doing now in free agency, not just signing players and trading for players, but also the report, Cade Cunningham will get the max extension, and Simone Fontecchio was offered a qualifying offer. So the Detroit Pistons have the right to match any offer or engage in a sign and trade. So it will be interesting to see how they handle that. Simone Fontecchio, in my opinion, needs to be a Detroit Piston next year.
Oh, I am leading that charge. If Simone Fontecchio, if they let him walk, that will be very, very disappointing to me. I mean, he was like, when he played last year, he was basically like Bojan level shooting, but even a little bit better, even a little better than Bojan, but better defense.
Yeah, definitely. And with Tobias Harris, just a few points here. You know, with his usage rate, we kind of talked about this in the break. His highest usage rate in the last 3 years was this past season, and also correlated with his lowest 3-point percentage as well. The lower his usage rate is, it always correlates with a higher 3-point percentage. And in Philly's offense, he was asked to do a little bit more ISO and a little bit more creation for his own shot than he would be asked to do here. I'm hoping. I'm hoping that with guys like Cade Cunningham and another guy in Jaden Ivey, if Cade is going to be one that I think is going to benefit the most from having spacing, if Jaden Ivey's on this roster and you got a coach in JB Bickerstaff who will understand how to stagger these players, I think that Jaden Ivey is the second player who's going to benefit the most from this type of spacing, especially given the fact that his speed, his ability to get to the rim and get into the paint is going to attract defenders. If you know you got some honest shooters out there on the arc, it's going to get him some more looks at the rim, and maybe he brings up that percentage in terms of finishing at the rim. So, KG, I know you had a few things as well.
Yeah, just in terms of the Tobias Harris move, and I do feel Broder's sentiments a lot. I can't really speak to whether, they maybe could have waited on a move like this and maybe tried to be more aggressive in the trade market. I do get that I think everybody in this room said that he wasn't their first choice, and I'm in that boat as well. But he's going to help this team. The Pistons did get better with adding a Tobias Harris, 16 to 18 a point game guy. His 3-point percentage is something that this team absolutely needs. And while he's not a great defender, he will help on the defensive end. But the more I study Trajan and the more that I just look at this move, I can't help but think that maybe this is just a 1-year stopgap for a forward. And then maybe he tries to flip this contract for assets in the offseason or maybe next year. So we'll see. It's only a 2-year deal. They didn't pay him a ton of money, but I think this is a play by Trajan to maybe get some future assets down the road.
I think everything is about keeping your options open at this point in time if you're the Pistons.
Yeah.
It's something that Rod and I for a couple years talked about as well with the Troy Weaver regime, is that you want to keep yourself in a position to where your roster is as valuable as possible to you if you decide to keep these players or if you decide to engage in the trade market as well. That's what every roster should be, so that you don't have any dead weights, which we've seen a lot of.
Yeah.
In a lot of these Pistons teams, a lot of dead weights that you realize we're going to just have to pay guys to go away. We can't even trade these players. They hold no discernible value, no trait that you can say, you know what, this is above average. Well, now we just added a couple players in Tim Hardaway and Tobias Harris who are above average at what they bring to the floor. You got a Simone Fonseca who's younger, so you probably want to hold on to him a little bit longer for this roster and where you can go. But I agree with a lot of the sentiments. You guys, it's no secret. We all talked about for a couple months what strategy we desired for the Detroit Pistons on this show. And then on our own, before this show even started, we were probably all saying what we would like to see them do. They're choosing the kind of more patient, the more safe route too. One that I believe is like, you know what? Okay, if I'm at a thrift shop and I'm shopping, say, okay, I trust this brand more than this cheaper one over here. So I'm going to go with this over here. And I think that's what Tobias and Tim Hardaway represent. Kind of something that you're comfortable with, that you know is going to work, you know it's going to play, you know what it's going to give you. It's pretty consistent.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's not like you said, Flannel, it's not my first choice, but I'm okay with it.
Well, and KG, you mentioned it. If Tobias Harris becomes somebody that the Pistons end up flipping after year one, that's not a bad thing.
Not at all.
Because Tobias Harris is a type of guy, he's not the perfect player, but let me just ask you guys this. Could the Dallas Mavericks have used Tobias Harris last year?
Absolutely.
In the finals? 100%.
Absolutely.
I think that they fare a little bit better against Boston if they had Tobias Harris. I'm not saying they would have won, but they would have fared better. They would have had a third scorer who can shoot, who can also create for himself if he has to. So the point is that there's going to be a contending team that is going to be a player like Tobias Harris away. And that's where, if that's what Trajan Langdon decides he wants to do, that's where he's going to have to pounce.
Yeah.
But there's going to be opportunities.
It's not a bad deal either. 26
It's not.
million.
That's part of it. 26 million is not like a radioactive contract. His previous one kind of was.
Yeah.
But with new beginnings, right? New beginnings.
And you know, when people started first thumbing their nose up at the idea of Tobias Harris being here, I remember the numbers that people thought it would be. They said, Detroit's going to have to pay him like 35, 40 million because his services are going to be desired by everybody. They got it for $26 million.
Yeah.
That does change things for me a lot as it relates to Tobias Harris being here. And it still keeps him flexible in this free agency as well as in the future. They're telling you now 1-2 year window. They're hoping for this team to be, I think, something we could be proud of in a couple years. Something that you will know discernibly. Like Cade is that man. Whoever his running mates are, we will know by that time for certain. You think about it, we'll know if Ron Holland's that guy, Ivy, Duren, Asar, and by that time, you're even more comfortable re-spending that money that comes off the books when Tobias Harris and Tim Hardaway are no longer here.
Yep, and that's the beauty of them being short-term and expiring. There's all kinds of flexibility. Broder, you got something?
Yeah, do you think Tim Hardaway is going to remind Tobias Harris about that 2011 March Madness game? Michigan
Oh my
versus
God.
Tennessee?
Come on.
I believe Michigan won 75-45.
Oh, yeah, that was
talk about it.
Yeah,
man.
no,
like that.
those
like
are the
it.
days. Those are the days with Hardaway. But no, with this $24 million they have left, what do you think the Pistons need to do with this? With the remaining free agency, I'm kind of thinking they need another center, don't they? Right now it's Duren and Beef Stew.
Yeah.
They need another point guard.
I would love a backup point guard. I would love a center, but if you can get someone like a Gary Trent, I'm not mad at that either.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly who they should be going after right now because that market, it just dried up something weird. A lot of the players that we heard that the Pistons were going to be targeting, those teams those players were with, they were like, y'all, we're not even getting to the free agency period. All of that news broke before free agency. That OG and some of these other players are going back to their teams. So it was interesting. I've heard, little rumors and things of that nature that I'll kind of dig into a little bit more and be able to have some more concrete kind of a plan for the Pistons maybe tomorrow. But I don't know. Is there anybody still out there for you that you're like, you know what, that's the guy that you got to bring in? Because I just don't see that in the free agency market anymore.
Well, it depends on what Trajan wants to do, because I think it would behoove the Detroit Pistons to maybe take on a bad contract to get an asset or two. A couple examples that I came up with, guys who are expiring after this year. If they want to maybe take on Lonzo Ball's contract,
I'm in.
I'm in for that too.
Yeah.
And JB, it's not about whether or not he plays or not, because he may never play again.
Yeah.
And that's very sad and that's very tragic. But it's about what the Bulls might be willing to attach to Lonzo Ball for us to take on his $21 million salary. And even another one, and I'll get to you, KG, in a second.
Yeah, no problem.
Another one going into free agency who's an expiring contract. Do you think the Orlando Magic want to dump Jonathan Isaac's salary?
Oh.
Someone like that.
Not bad.
Another guy.
17 mil?
Yeah, 17 mil.
Not
a
bad.
guy who has been riddled, like he had an ACL injury, and it took him a really long time to recover. He played a bit last year. I mean, he played 58 games. He was somewhat effective.
He's solid, yeah.
He's solid, but the Orlando Magic, they're going to give the bag to Paolo Banchero, as they should. They're going to give a big bag to Franz Wagner, as they should. They might even give one to Jalen Suggs. They just gave one to KCP. Those are a couple contracts that if I'm Trajan Langdon, I'm like, oh yeah, I'll take that on.
Yeah.
Give us a pick.
And
Give us a couple
about
picks.
re-signing Mo Wagner.
Mo Wagner, he's a free agent that I think Mo Wagner is a lot more valuable to them moving forward than Jonathan Isaac. And
Absolutely.
Absolutely. KG?
Yeah, and shout out to DNC ENT in the chat. He always show love. I'm not gonna lie. If we don't acquire a first round pick this summer, I will be a little disappointed. And I think that is the goal at this point. If that's going to be your strategy going forward, then you need to acquire as many assets as possible. I don't know how exactly they'll get that done, because maybe the Zach LaVine deal is something they can look into, or maybe, like you mentioned, the Jonathan Isaac deal, that would be a good deal as well. But they have to get a first. I think it's imperative that this summer they come away with at least one or two first round picks. Is that crazy to
I think it
say?
is a little bit crazy, just because I think Zach LaVine is probably the only contract in the NBA. When I'm just thinking quickly, I might miss one. His might be the only contract in the NBA, and maybe Lonzo's right now at this juncture that would require, I got to attach a first round pick to be able to move this player.
Yeah.
The other way around, the Pistons, if they were to have the assets that would require a first round pick in return, you're talking about giving up at least two of your young players. And so it's like if they walk away with a bunch of second-round picks that they can flip into some first-rounders, if they can package with the young player, I'm fine with that. I won't be as disappointed. Would it be nice? Yeah. I'm not going to scoff at that, but I'm trying to find a path to them being able to get that first-rounder outside of dealing with the Chicago Bulls, and I don't see how easy that path is.
Well, Trajan Langdon, then go deal with the Chicago Bulls.
Yeah.
Because I'm good with Zach LaVine. I'm good with taking on Zach LaVine. I'm good with taking on Lonzo Ball. Either one. To help build this team in the right way with more assets. And in the case of Zach LaVine, he would massively help this team. I think he would help Cade, and I think he would benefit. And Lonzo Ball, it's a free roll.
Yeah.
If he
Backup point guard.
And the thing about Lonzo Ball is, and people kind of forget about this, is that Lonzo Ball, when he last played for the Chicago Bulls, and I'm not saying he's going to play again, and the assets he could bring would be his most valuable asset, no pun intended, but when he was with the Chicago Bulls, when we last saw him, he was putting up Klay Thompson-like efficiency from three, over 42% on 7 attempts per game.
Fred Vincent.
Free roll.
Fred Vincent.
Fred Vincent. Yep.
Yeah.
Hey, Lonzo Ball is one of the guys who Fred Vincent famously fixed, along with Brandon Ingram, for the record.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. One last name before we get to Jesus. A name that 8-9 years ago would have been the worst fit of all time. But what do you think about JaVale McGee? You bring him on a cheap deal. You need a rim protecting big,
McGee.
whether it's starting some games or coming off the bench. He's mature now, and I think he could help Jalen Duren a lot.
I've always liked JaVale McGee.
Yeah.
It just has, if it's a player you're talking about coming off the bench, you can manage his minutes and really force him into those kind of high energy role. That's what I think he is best. I've always liked him. I've never been one of those guys who got caught up in the whole kind of acting a fool or shacking a fool thing. I get it. It's funny when you want to zero in on somebody's mistakes only. But I've always liked what JaVale McGee has brought to the table.
He was shacking a full back. I
He
mean,
was.
oh my God. He was pretty outrageous.
But he was still going out there and doing some really good things.
He was,
And when you look at JaVale McGee's history, and I'm not saying that he's my first choice or anything like that. Yes, he had the shacked in the fool stuff, but
JaVale
I'm looking at the 2017-2018 Warriors roster. JaVale McGee was on it. I'm looking at the 2019-2020 Lakers roster. JaVale McGee was on it, and he was putting up okay numbers. Like he was a rim protector. He gave him some interior defense, and I mean, he's just a presence in the middle.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he was the reason. I'm just saying that a guy who was thought of as so radioactive and such a bad basketball IQ, he's never going to win anything. He was able to play a role. He was able to mature. Do what he had to do.
I like it. I like it. That's a good suggestion, Broder.
Definitely a cheap contract as well, too. I mean, you could probably get him around, 2-3 years for 8 to 12 mil?
I don't know if you want to sign up for that long.
It's
a 1 year.
Two
That's
at
a
best.
one and done.
Player with a team option.
That is a one and done.
Yeah.
That's all you need.
Yeah, 2-year player option. Bring him home. You know what I'm saying? This is his home state.
Yeah.
I would like it. I honestly would, because the Detroit Pistons, they have to get, somebody in there that has kind of this defensive instinct, something that can contrast with Jalen Duren in practices, in training camps, during the games, somebody who can be on the court. I like Taj Gibson, but I think JaVale McGee can give us a little bit more on the actual floor. So we need a backup center. We need somebody with that mindset that's going to, I want to be able to erase everything at the rim. Whether they can actually do that or not, at least you know that JaVale McGee has that mindset. He will foul you. You talk about a guy, because I really dislike this, the Detroit Pistons and the and ones they give up. Like, I'm just tired of it. JaVale McGee is one of those guys that's like, he's clubbing you like Eldon Campbell used to. And I don't know, man. I like that. I like that. For our backup center, somebody who you can, like I said earlier, manage the minutes. It's a good suggestion, brother. I like it, brother. Man, where do we got to go? We got some bills to pay?
Yep, Lady James.
Lady James. Hey, let me tell you guys about something awesome. If you didn't think the Pistons free agency was awesome, I can tell you that